The boy was playing games with his little sister when he suddenly noticed that a group of zombies, covered from head to toe in blood, had wandered over to their house. But strangely enough, instead of being scared, the two children acted as if nothing had happened and kept playing. That was because it had already been 6 years since the zombie virus outbreak. The world had long been destroyed by the undead. Almost all of humanity had been wiped out, and 99% of the land was now controlled by zombies. Only one miracle remained. Hidden deep in the snowy mountains stood a villa where a young brother and sister had somehow managed to survive all this time. Every night, groups of zombies gathered outside the house, but the children were already used to it. The villa's floor-to-ceiling windows were made of bulletproof glass, so no matter how hard the zombies slammed into them, they couldn't break through. Living in such a dangerous world had forced the older brother to become incredibly calm and mentally strong. He had also learned excellent survival skills. Every day, he set traps all around the villa to stop any zombies from getting close. But what the boy didn't know was that the most terrifying thing in this world wasn't the zombies. It was the remaining 1% of humans. A safe mountain villa filled with supplies would definitely attract other survivors. And sure enough, one day, a pickup truck stopped in front of the house. The boy, Jack, immediately picked up what looked like a toy gun and walked outside. He warned the stranger not to even think about taking the house. The man simply smiled. Then he asked Jack where his parents were. Jack ignored the question completely. He stared at the man with cold, watchful eyes, carefully paying attention to every move he made. Seeing Jack's serious expression, the man smiled again, asked no more questions, got back into his truck, and drove away. But what the man didn't know was that the gun in Jack's hands wasn't an ordinary toy. It had been modified into a tranquilizer gun. If one of its darts hit a person, they would pass out almost instantly. If the man had shown even the slightest sign of bad intentions, Jack wouldn't have hesitated to shoot him. The brother and sister thought life would continue peacefully like this, but the very next day, the same man returned in his pickup truck. This time, he even brought his girlfriend with him. His attitude had become much more forceful. Without asking for permission, the woman picked up Jack's little sister and said they were moving in so they could protect the children. Jack didn't believe a single word they said. To scare them off, he lied and said that his parents had gone into town to look for supplies and would be back soon. But the man didn't believe him. He admitted that he had been secretly watching the villa for several days and knew only the two children lived there. The woman kept insisting they were good people and only wanted to stay for a short time before leaving. Jack knew better. It was easy to invite someone in, but almost impossible to make them leave. Still, for his sister's safety, he had no choice but to agree. The moment the couple entered the house, they started searching through everything. When they saw the electricity still worked and the villa was packed with food and supplies, they couldn't hide their excitement. Without asking, they grabbed food and started eating. They never imagined that in this world where supplies were almost impossible to find, two children had managed to store so much food. Compared to the outside world, this place was practically paradise. Right then and there, they decided they wanted to stay permanently. To avoid attracting other survivors, they even hid their pickup truck deep inside the forest. Watching all of this, Jack quietly began thinking of another way to deal with them. Jack quietly started thinking of another way to deal with the couple. That night, the man and woman cooked themselves a delicious dinner and relaxed as if the villa already belonged to them. But Jack didn't eat a single bite. He simply stared at their greedy faces before suddenly saying something strange. The couple looked at each other in confusion. They assumed it was just something a child would say and paid no attention to it. However, after everyone had gone to sleep and the house became completely quiet, Jack quietly carried his little sister and their dog into a hidden safe room. Then he carefully locked the heavy door behind them. Meanwhile, downstairs, the couple was still happily enjoying their comfortable new life. They had no idea that danger was slowly closing in. A little later, the woman suddenly felt like she needed to use the bathroom. She walked to the restroom, but when she came back, she froze in horror. Outside the villa, countless zombies had completely surrounded the house. Since they knew the villa was built with bulletproof glass, the zombies couldn't get inside. The man quickly told his girlfriend to turn off all the lights. He believed that once the lights were off, everything would be safe. But just then, A dark figure suddenly lunged straight at the woman. The man immediately pulled out his pistol and slowly walked toward her. When he got close, he was shocked to find his girlfriend lying motionless on the floor. After that, the couple completely disappeared without a trace. The next morning, the villa returned to its usual peaceful silence. The brother and sister walked outside and continued playing games as if nothing had happened. But this peaceful life didn't last very long. Soon, someone else set their sights on the villa. One day, a long-haired man slowly walked out of the deep forest. He had once been a special forces soldier, so he quickly noticed all the traps Jack had hidden around the area. After carefully making his way through the maze of traps, he finally discovered the mountain villa. He hesitated, wondering whether he should go inside. Just then, a little girl suddenly appeared nearby. Before he even had time to react, a tranquilizer dart shot straight into his neck. He immediately pulled the dart out. At first, he thought it was just some kind of accident. But within seconds, the world around him started spinning. Everything became blurry. Then he collapsed onto the ground. When he finally woke up, he saw a young boy aiming a tranquilizer gun directly at him. It had now been 6 years since the zombie outbreak. Jack believed the man had come to steal the villa. The man quickly introduced himself. "My name is Dan. I'm a retired Special Forces soldier. I only want my gun and knife back. You took them after knocking me out. After that, I'm heading north to find my wife. I have no interest in your house." After talking with him for a while, Jack realized this man was different from the other survivors they had met before. So he finally invited Dan inside the villa. When Jack saw that Dan wasn't asking for food, supplies, or shelter, he slowly lowered his guard. Then he gave Dan an order. "If you generate electricity for the house, I'll return your weapons afterward." When Dan saw the strange power system inside the villa, he was completely stunned. The entire villa was powered by a treadmill. Someone literally had to run to produce electricity. Just then, a zombie suddenly appeared outside. Without thinking, Dan rushed over and smashed the zombie to pieces. After he returned inside, Jack unexpectedly asked him, "Why did you kill that zombie?" He explained that the villa was completely bulletproof. The zombie had no way of getting inside. Dan thought the boy's question was strange and completely unreasonable. But seeing that Jack was still just a child, he didn't argue. Instead, he silently stepped onto the treadmill and began running to generate electricity for the villa. He kept running from evening until late into the night, and finally until dawn. By the time morning arrived, Dan was completely exhausted and collapsed from fatigue. Seeing how Dan had spent the entire night generating electricity for the house, Jack kindly allowed him to take a shower. While heading toward the bathroom, Dan became curious about a small locked room nearby. Just as he was about to open the door and look inside, Jack suddenly stopped him from behind. Dan had no choice but to give up, but that only made him even more curious about what was hidden inside that mysterious room. Another night came. This time, Jack didn't take his little sister to the safe room. Instead, the two of them slept together in one of the bedrooms. But before going to sleep, Jack did something very strange. He quietly tied one of his hands to the bed. Before sunrise the next morning, Dan was awakened by the sound of the front door opening. When he got up to look, he saw Jack carrying his tranquilizer gun as he headed outside. Curious, Dan quietly followed him. After walking for a while, he discovered that one of Jack's traps had captured a zombie. The zombie was tightly restrained and couldn't escape. Seeing this, Dan immediately stepped forward, planning to kill it. But before he could do anything, Jack quickly pointed the tranquilizer gun at him, stopping him. Jack's unusual behavior made Dan feel that something wasn't right. Without saying anything, he walked back to the villa and opened the small room Jack had forbidden him to enter. Inside, the floor was covered with blankets. The walls were filled with countless deep scratch marks. It was obvious that a zombie had once been locked inside this room. Before Dan could fully understand what he was seeing, the sound of a vehicle engine suddenly came from outside. Another group of survivors had found the villa. The newcomers stood outside with weapons in their hands, carefully watching the house. It was obvious they weren't here with good intentions. Since Dan didn't have his own weapons anymore, he could only hide nearby and wait. At the same time Jack hurried back to the villa, neither of them dared to make a careless move. Just then, Jack's little sister spotted her brother through the second-floor window. She happily waved at him over and over again. The moment Jack saw her, his face changed. If the armed strangers noticed the little girl, everything would be over. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Dan rushed upstairs, grabbed the little girl, and pulled her away from the window before anyone outside could see her. After noticing signs that people were living inside the villa, the strangers suddenly became nervous. Instead of attacking, they hurried back into their vehicle and drove away. After everything that had happened, Jack finally realized that Dan truly wasn't a bad person. He completely let down his guard. He even returned Dan's gun and knife. With his weapons back, Dan originally planned to continue his journey north to search for his wife. But after spending time with the brother and sister, he found it difficult to leave them behind. After thinking about it for a long time, he finally made a decision. He asked the two children to come with him. That way he could continue searching for his wife while also protecting and taking care of them. But Jack quietly refused. It seemed as though he was hiding a secret he couldn't tell anyone. Just then, a terrified scream came from outside. It was Jack's little sister calling for help. Everyone rushed outside. They discovered that a group of armed criminals had kidnapped the little girl. Both sides immediately faced each other in a tense standoff. But the criminals had far more people. Neither Dan nor Jack had any chance of winning. Just as the situation became desperate, several gunshots suddenly rang out from deep inside the forest. Two of the kidnappers instantly fell to the ground. Taking advantage of the confusion, Dan rushed forward and rescued the little girl. Soon, all three criminals had been killed. A woman slowly walked out from the trees. She was the one who had fired the shots, and she was none other than Jack and his little sister's mother, Anna. The crisis was finally over, but during the fight, Dan had accidentally been shot. The next moment, everything went black, and he collapsed onto the ground. Everyone believed he was dead, yet not long afterward, Dan suddenly came back to life. Even more unbelievable, the gunshot wound in his stomach had completely healed on its own. Dan stood there completely confused. He had no idea what had just happened. Meanwhile, the family inside the villa calmly waved for him to come over. None of them looked surprised at all. Filled with questions, Dan slowly walked toward the house. As Dan slowly walked into the villa, Anna finally revealed the truth behind everything. She explained that after the zombie virus spread across the world, infected people were divided into two different types. The first type completely lost their minds and turned into ordinary zombies that attacked every living thing they saw. The second type was much rarer. They were called special infected. Even after being infected, they still looked and acted like normal people. They could think, speak, and live just like everyone else. They also had an incredible ability. Whenever they died, their bodies would automatically heal, allowing them to come back to life. However, there was a terrible price. Every once in a while, they would suddenly transform into mindless zombies. No one knew exactly when it would happen. The only warning came from a specially trained dog that could smell the change before the transformation began. Anna then looked at Dan and quietly revealed another secret. Jack is also one of these special infected. Only then did Dan understand everything. That was why the couple who had stayed in the villa had mysteriously disappeared. Every night, Jack tied himself to the bed because he was afraid he would transform and hurt his little sister. In the small locked room covered in deep claw marks was the place where Jack was locked up whenever he turned into a zombie. Dan stood there speechless. He never imagined that he himself had unknowingly become one of these special infected. For a moment, he didn't even know whether this was a blessing or a curse. But there was nothing he could do except keep moving forward one day at a time. Seeing how difficult life was for Anna and her two children, Dan decided to stay with them a little longer. Every day, he spent hours running on the treadmill, generating as much electricity as possible so the family would have enough power stored. The next day, while everyone was outside playing, the family's dog suddenly began barking loudly at Jack. The moment Anna saw the dog's reaction, her expression changed. She immediately realized that Jack was about to transform again. For everyone's safety, she quickly locked him inside the small room. Sure enough, not long afterward, terrifying scratching and biting sounds echoed from inside. Hours passed, then even more time passed, but Jack still didn't return to normal. With no other choice, Dan and Anna took turns standing outside the room, patiently waiting for him. They believed everything would be fine after a few days, but before one problem ended, another tragedy struck. While Jack's little sister was playing outside, she suddenly collapsed to the ground. Anna rushed over and discovered that her daughter had suffered another attack caused by her congenital heart disease. In this zombie-filled world, there was no hospital. There were no doctors. No one could save her. Dan suddenly suggested something. What if Jack bites her? If she becomes a special infected too, she might survive. Anna immediately refused. She explained that the chance of becoming a special infected was extremely small. Most infected people simply became ordinary zombies. And even if it worked, she couldn't bear the thought of her daughter living the painful life Jack had been forced to endure. In the end, the two adults could only stay beside the little girl and quietly watch as she passed away. After Jack finally returned to normal, Dan decided it was time to leave. He still had to continue traveling north to search for his missing wife. Although Anna and Jack didn't want him to go, they respected his decision and didn't try to stop him. After Dan left, only Anna and Jack remained in the quiet mountain villa, but none of them knew Dan would soon return. That very night, while sleeping in the forest, he was surrounded by a large horde of zombies. With nowhere else to go, he ran back toward the villa. But when he arrived, he found that another group of armed criminals had already taken over the house. Anna and Jack had been tied up. It was obvious these people had no good intentions. Determined to rescue them, Dan carefully studied the surroundings like the trained Special Forces soldier he once was. After spotting an opening, he quietly drew his knife and slipped into the villa without making a sound. By the time the gang leader realized what was happening, Dan was already standing right in front of him. But within seconds, all the criminals surrounded him. Knowing he couldn't escape, Dan looked at Jack and gave him a meaningful glance. Then, without hesitation, he used his own knife to cut his own throat. The criminals stood there completely stunned. They couldn't understand why he had suddenly killed himself. Then something impossible happened. The deep wound across Dan's neck began healing before their eyes. Moments later, his pupils changed. His body transformed. He became a bloodthirsty zombie. Without showing any mercy, he slaughtered every one of the criminals. To stay safe, Anna quickly took Jack into the safe room and locked the door. Outside, Dan continued his brutal rampage. More than a month passed before he finally regained his human consciousness. When he opened his eyes again, the area around the villa was covered with dead bodies. But Anna and Jack were gone. Then Dan noticed a note they had left behind. It explained that they had already left the villa and were traveling north in search of a safer place to live. At that moment, Dan realized there was nothing left in the villa for him anymore. So he quietly picked up his belongings and began walking north alone. And with that, the movie comes to an end.